Well, good morning, everybody. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, or TMI for short, where we bring you way too much information. Anything from news, politics, lifestyle, culture, fad diets, what the kids are doing or not doing. Today, the occult. Very excited about that. And anything and everything goes, because we believe you can never have too much information. So if you're looking for a straight-laced, button-down news show, this is not going to be it for you. It is probably sometimes not family-friendly because, to the surprise of many, Ted drops F-bombs. I do
Yeah,
too.
because kids never ever hear the word fuck ever.
No.
That's what's so great
So
about our society is that how we're so good at protecting
we're
virgin
pretending.
children from evil things.
We are protecting and pretending that children have never heard this sort of language before. So if you guys want to
I
find
got in trouble in
some
third
weird.
grade for using the word damn, and I was referring to a thing that blocks rivers.
Oh, I got in trouble for hell in second or third grade, but
Mhm.
you know,
I'm
it was
pretty
the
sure I got in
80s.
trouble for hell too.
So see, that it's all stuff that you want to hear about, stuff you didn't know that you needed to hear about, and we're going to talk about it here. We are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to like and follow this show. The Ted Manila Info Show starts now.
That thing cracks me up. It's so bad.
That's the whole point.
It sounds well. It's appropriate for our theme for our show today because it sort of sounds like imagine the sound of like, what are remember the chattering teeth? The kids. Well, your kid might
Oh,
even have.
the wind up, the little
Yeah,
wind up teeth.
yeah, like the chattering teeth. Yeah, like
Yeah,
like when they start to rust or something.
creaky old something, which is
Yes.
perfect for today's show because
Well,
our guest is going to talk about some creepy stuff because it's our Halloween show. Because we have to warn everybody, we are not live tomorrow because not because just because it's Halloween, but because I had some pre-arranged doctor's appointments already, unrelated to why I was out the last couple of days. So and it's parent teacher conference tomorrow on Halloween.
so do you have to do it the way? Oh, well, your kid's still pretty young, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like, okay, so like, yeah, we had to do this strange thing. I don't think my mom ever had to do this, but we had to do this thing in high school or in junior high school where they would give us a class schedule that was basically like a mini me version of it. So let's say my son had like a class from say, let's say 8:15 to 9 o'clock. Then we'd have this at like 5 o'clock to 5:06. We'd have to go to that same exact class and then run like over to like
What?
from 5:11. You'll see this is coming for you. This is in the mail.
Oh, when
Manila.
they're older. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, you
okay.
have to do
So when
this.
they're older. No, this is just the one kindergarten teacher.
Yep.
So
Who will
we
have?
have a fixed appointment. Yeah.
I got
He's
into trouble in.
he's with her all days.
I found my old report card from that period, and in my files, and it said Ted is has a remarkable talent for identifying his classmates' Achilles' heels and reducing them to tears.
You were mean?
As I recall, now bear in mind this was 1968, so it was a long time ago. But I have a very good memory, and I remember 1968. So, or at least I think I remember it. So, I remember just telling, like I didn't start anything, and this is always my policy now. I will never start anything, but I will fucking finish it. So, like
that's what I always say. And
yeah.
and I tell my son the same thing. He's already had his first fist fight like in the second week of kindergarten. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the teacher already warned me. She said, I'd be curious to know what you and your husband teach him at home.
About what? Anything at all?
Like human physiology and anatomy, or like what are we talking about? But she said, that's okay. We'll talk about it at parent teacher conference. And I went,
Oh, that's scary. That's
you're
not
blaming
ominous.
my kid. Yeah, I know. So
Well, that's like when
she,
someone says, like your boss, like, "Hey, Manila, got a second? I need
yeah.
to talk to you." You're like, "Well, okay, you
Well,
might as well just get the banker's box and start throwing your shit in there because you're
but
gonna be
remember, Ted,
fired."
she doesn't really know who I am. So we'll
Right,
just say that.
right,
As
right,
far as
right.
she knows, I'm a suburban DC Metro mom, and she doesn't know anything else. That's all she knows.
Yeah,
So,
and
anyway.
maybe she doesn't mean anything by it. Maybe she just says that to all the parents. I mean,
Hmm.
my mom was asked, like, why the fuck didn't you teach him, English? Because I showed up like a migrant child, only speaking
Oh,
French, and they called
speaking
my mom,
French.
and my mom never missing a beat, and she never missed a beat ever, and she said, "Isn't that your job?"
Oh, wow.
Good point.
Cutting. Well,
She's
well,
not really wrong, really.
no. So before we get to the news, I'll explain my absence, and I want to give a big thank you, by the way, for you calling in Scott Stantis and having him fill in. Thank you so much, Scott. If you are watching, thank you so much. Um, it was not expected. I thought, I was feeling a little under the weather because of kiddo and the petri dish that he is, coming home from school with whatever germs. But anyway, long story short, it turns out what I thought was just getting a little cold because my kid was sick the last couple of weeks. Turned out it morphed into viral meningitis for me. And now I also discovered, there's like 3 types of meningitis. The bacterial one,
Mhm.
20% of people die from bacterial meningitis. Can you believe it? Even in
That's not
first
good.
world countries. Those are not good numbers. So that's like the red alert one. Then there's the carcinogenic meningitis, which could have been suspicion for me because having just had breast cancer, right? So there was some suspicion of that, even
I
though the
won't lie, I was
technology,
worried sick about that when I consulted Dr.
the t-
Google. Yeah.
yeah, the time, just because of the timing. I mean, I
Isn't it
literally
called
had,
like carcereal or something like that? It's got
I
some,
don't know, but
yeah.
it's that one is basically when the the cancer cells got away from where it originated
Mhm.
and manifested somewhere else and then becomes meningitis. So those 2 are super bad. Turns out I have the lowest rung, which is viral meningitis,
Also known
which
as lame meningitis or
lame.
pussy meningitis. Thank God.
That's right. Where I was basically just kind of like immobilized, like from here up. Like I literally couldn't move my head. It was like excruciating pain. And mind you, I had just had the mastectomy and I've given birth. So I know pain. And this, like, those 2 were not as bad as this in my neck. I couldn't move my head. It was completely frozen. I couldn't I couldn't eat. Everything was swollen here. I couldn't drink. Like, I lost a couple of pounds, and I don't have a lot of pounds to lose. So, lucky for me, I guess, it's just a viral infection that kind of spread and went to what I forget the name of the sac that surrounds your spinal cord, and
Mm.
infected that. And so I had a fun spinal tap, which I'm still feeling the pain from in
Mhm.
my lumbar right now because they stick like a 9-inch needle into your back. So that's not fun. But at any rate, they infused me with like multiple
I read that
different
they can
viruses.
touch a nerve when they do the needle thing.
Yes.
Did they or not?
No, I don't think no, because if they touch a nerve, I mean, they could really
Apparently it's like,
damage you.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't have that. It's just I feel like it's a puncture wound, maybe. But if they do it wrong, they can paralyze you.
Yeah. That's not good.
So, that's not
But at
good.
least you know
So
where
that
you'd be for the rest of your life. In a
oh my
chair.
god. Aw.
Well,
Well,
you can still
good
do the
thing my
show.
job is mostly sitting. Yeah, I can still do the show.
Yeah.
But so none of that happened, and it's basically just I just gotta tough it out, take anti-inflammatories, and they're giving me some muscle relaxers that I need to pick up today because I was released late last night. And, so I'm pretty much gonna be okay, but they say I am infectious. I'm contagious. So it's a good thing we're virtual, Ted, and the
That is
audience
good.
is not live in front of me.
Right. So this is like the old quarantine days for you.
It's like COVID quarantine. I have to stay away from everybody for the rest of this week. They gave me antivirals, and interesting thing,
How long
because
are you?
I talked to the nurses.
Go ahead.
Do you know that they didn't give me they gave me one IV because they have to ration um the saline solution, apparently, because
It's just salt water.
but here's why. The plants that make all of these things, like for Baxter and all these medical supply companies, were damaged in the recent hurricanes in Florida and
No
North
way.
Carolina. Yeah.
No way.
So they rationed the whole time, almost 48 hours that I was there. I had one actual IV solution, and then they gave me antivirals without the saline, because normally it'd be like 2 bags, right? Hanging.
Right. With
I
saline's better.
only
It's
no,
faster. It infuses more. Right.
no saline. They could only give me one because they were rationing. And mind you, I'm not in like bumfuck wherever. I'm in a major metropolitan city, less than 10 miles from the White House, and they were rationing IVs.
Well, see, this is another example of why national health care is important. I mean, if you my feeling is, of course, obviously I'm a communist. I want everything to be by the state, but like pending that, I feel like the case I would make is that any essential service should be provided by the state, not by private industry. Things like education, transportation, food, housing, anything that people have to have. Not like, say, video games. Those can be
fair,
privatized.
Sure,
fair. Talk radio can be privatized. But
fair.
But I think that, like, you definitely have to have. I mean, this is an example, right? I mean, the state should have a company that makes its own factory in a place where there are no hurricanes or plagues of locusts.
IVs are kind of important.
That make saline bags by the zillions. There should be fuck tons of them. Yeah.
Like that's their only job, is they make saline bags for the country. But so that was like, while I was there, I was still being a reporter as much as I could speak, right? And I asked all these questions. So there we are. So anyway, I am back, and we should jump to headlines because we have a guest today. It's our Halloween theme.
Let's leap in face first. All right, here we go. Off to the races. Multi-hyphenate billionaire and reproduction-obsessed father of 11 children, Elon Musk, wants to move his entire patchwork family into a collection of 3 mansions in Austin, Texas. According to the New York Times, Musk has told people close to him that he wants his many children, there are 11 known ones, ranging from infancy to young adulthood, and 2 of their 3 mothers, to move into 2 properties near his mansion in Austin, which is just a 10-minute walk away. And Musk is probably not done with having kids. The entrepreneur has long cited failing fertility rates as being the #1 threat to humanity, making it his mission as a dad to have as many kids as possible. Now that his brood has grown, he wants to raise them inside a compound, an unusual living arrangement that's bound to draw attention. This is, by the way, what rich Muslims like the late Osama bin Laden did. They would have multiple wives, each with their own sort of their own kids in their own house in a compound, and then the moms could
Sheikh Mohammed in Dubai.
They can help each other out, right? It's like
Sheikh Mohammed in Dubai, same thing.
It's like, I'm going to be a guest on the TMI show. Can you fill in for me, Fatima, and help me out? And so anyway, so that it is actually not unheard of. It's also kind of the Mormon polygamous thing, right? Like they would do that too, like big love kind of thing, right? Like, so that happens. Anyway, those mansions, which Musk bought for $35 million, are in a dense part of town, which is not gated. Kind of unusual for someone as rich as Musk. Musk's obsession with spreading his genes has led to some bizarre situations. According to the latest report, he went as far as to offer his own sperm to friends and acquaintances, hopefully not at mealtime, including the former independent vice presidential candidate Nicole Shanahan, who ran alongside Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Apparently, Nicole said, keep your jizz. In July, the New York Times previously reported that Musk had volunteered his jizz to SpaceX employees to seed a colony on, wait for it, Mars. It sounds like his plans to move his offspring to a Texas compound are, however, underway. The mother of 3 of his kids, Siobhan Zillis, an executive at Musk's brain-computer interface company Neuralink, has reportedly already moved into one of his 2 mansions. Claire Grimes Boucher, who's the mother of 3 of his kids, probably won't do the same, given the ugly extended custody battle between the 2, which brings us to candidate number 3 for one of the 2 Austin mansions, his first wife, Justine Musk, who's the mother of his 5 of his much older kids. There's still no word if she's planning to pick him up on his offer to join the compound.
Yeah, he's also in a race, I think, against Nick Cannon, who also has 12 children. It would have been 13, but one of Nick Cannon's babies, unfortunately, died before the age of 1, I think, or at least before the age of 2. So, but I don't know what this is just all creepy, weird shit. Like, I get it that Western society is failing in the birth rate numbers. There's a bust. I get it. But this is such a narcissistic way to answer the call to help, like, populate the earth with what, all Musk babies and all Cannon babies. And then we know the late sex offender human trafficker Jeffrey Epstein was looking into spreading his seed in vitro by the thousands, because there's evidence of it, that he literally froze a whole lot of his seed. And there were plans that were found at his Zorro compound in New Mexico that he was going to inseminate, like, all of these women. Where these women were, I don't know. Captain
So much
spunk
somewhere. So time.
Just
but you know what's funny about this, about culturally how much things have changed. When I was a kid, the biggest family, big sprawling Catholic family, the Brownfields in my school, they had 13 kids, and my late father-in-law, he had 16 siblings. 3 of them had died by the time I met him, but they were Taiwanese, and big sprawling family also. I mean, it's not really, it's not that long ago that having a dozen kids was really not insane. And now it's considered completely wackadoodle. Bear in mind that I think it's crazier that it was one mom who had to deal with like 12 kids or whatever, right? One mom. I mean, it's like, nuts. With Musk, you're talking about a total of 4 parents at least, right? So splitting up these 11 kids, it's not really. So it's like roughly, 2.7 children per parent. I mean, it's not that bad.
Think of the petri dish that household must have been with a dozen.
Yeah, I know that's on your mind right now, Manila, for sure.
Yes. Oh my God, that poor woman, whoever gave birth to the dozen kids, in the 1950s, she had to have been sick every day until those kids were out of her house. Like, every day.
Yeah.
I got one. Look at me.
All right, so let's move on here. We have headline number 2. Opposition parties are crying foul after the ruling party in Georgia, and I don't mean the state in the southeastern United States, the former Soviet republic, Georgian Dream, claimed victory with 54% support in a vote on Saturday. Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili said her country, I totally butchered that, said her country had fallen victim to a Russian special operation and vowed that she would not accept the election results. She demanded a rerun. She also called on Georgian citizens to take to the streets in protest. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, currently deputy chair of the country's Security Council, said of Zurabishvili's, got it right that time, demands that she needed to be removed from office and arrested for calling for a coup. Only a few countries have accepted the election results so far: Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, China, and Hungary. EU ministers called for an impartial investigation into complaints by international observers. Sweden said that it was pausing government cooperation with the authorities in Georgia. Hard to believe that Sweden and Georgia really have all that much going on together, but what do I know? Georgia's Central Election Committee asked the country's prosecution office to examine the fraud allegations raised by the president and opposition figures. President Biden criticized the conduct of Georgia's recent election, the parliamentary elections, which was marred by violence, and joined calls by European leaders for a transparent investigation into possible violations. Biden noted that international and domestic observers had not described the elections as free and fair, called on the Georgian government to begin an inclusive dialogue with all political forces in Georgia about restoring election integrity. Kind of funny to me that he says that, because after the plebiscite in Crimea in 2014, international observers did say that those elections were considered free and fair. And yet the United States, still officially under Biden, never recognized the results of that annexation by a population that overwhelmingly wanted to be in Russia and had been in Russia until 1953.
Well, look, Ted, this coming from a White House who has ponied up an undemocratically elected nominee in the shape of Kamala Harris to become one of the two people that's going to become president next week, right? Mm-hmm. For them to say, after they had international watchers there in Georgia, to say that this was not democratic, it was not free and fair, that's the U.S. line, though. At every election, at every turn, if it doesn't fall in line with the way the U.S. wants it to work out, that's the immediate thing they go for, is Russian interference. It wasn't democratic. It wasn't free and fair. I mean, do they literally take away the agency of the people that are voting? They literally, like, they almost want to imply that the few scuffles and fights like we just saw on screen there from Deutsche Welle, as if like there were guns being held to people's heads. So like, you better vote Georgian Dream. Like, none of that happened, nor did that happen in Crimea, nor did it happen in the Donbass, ahead of the war actually sparking off for the special military operation, right? The U.S. always claims that, because they just never, ever want people to actually have free and fair elections. If they don't like the election, the results, Washington will always resort to saying, those people were undermined by the Russians. Those dumb people. This wasn't even a fair election. It's bunk. Let's do it again. Like, what? No.
American hypocrisy is amazing. It reminds me of when Ronald Reagan, who couldn't stop talking about the importance of supporting the Polish Union solidarity in the early 1980s. But this was right after he had fired all the air traffic controllers in the United States for going on strike. So apparently trade unions are awesome in the Soviet bloc, but not in the United States.
Right.
So, all right, let's move on because we have 3 more to get through. Hezbollah has named cleric Naim Qasim, 71, as its new leader. Qasim was a longtime deputy of Hezbollah's previous leader, Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed by an Israeli airstrike, of course, last month. Qasim inherits Nasrallah's job at a precarious moment for Hezbollah, which has been fighting with Israel since Hamas attacked the Jewish state in October of 2023. The conflict escalated when Israel launched a ground invasion of Lebanon earlier this month, because they just didn't have enough to do. They needed to branch out and keep busy. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant responded to Qasim's appointment by posting his picture to X with the caption, "Temporary appointment, not for long." Okay, that's not creepy and disgusting.
That's not a death threat at all.
No, not at all. Mixed signals. Qasim has often been the public face of the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group, a role that has increased since Nasrallah's death. On October 8th, Qasim gave a speech in which he expressed support for a ceasefire in Lebanon without explicitly linking a truce to the end of the Gaza war, a condition upon which Hezbollah had previously insisted. So this would seem to be a more moderate tone. But in another speech on October 15th, Qasim signaled that Hezbollah would not agree to a deal that did not include an end to Israel's offensive in Gaza. So it sounds like there's a rift within the leadership of Hezbollah over this issue.
Yeah, regardless of whatever these parties that are all involved, because now it's kind of like this ugly threesome between Israel and Gaza and now Lebanon. I think at the end of the day, Ted, they are all waiting to see the outcome of next week's U.S. presidential election, because that's gonna be able for them to do the math and figure out what their timeline actually is. Because if Kamala Harris wins, is she? First of all, let me just state that there's no real major daylight between Trump and Harris on how to approach Israel's actions in Gaza. So I don't think that's going to change a whole lot, but the calculation will involve certainly whoever wins next week. So I think all the concerned parties, are just waiting for next week's elections before anything actually starts to take shape.
I think that's probably true. I mean, obviously, nobody really knows what's going to happen here in the U.S. or, even afterwards. Certainly, we don't know what U.S. policy will be vis-a-vis Israel after January 20th. All right, the Washington Post editor-at-large Robert Kagan resigned after the newspaper owned by Jeff Bezos, who of course runs Amazon, decided not to endorse anyone for president for the first time since 1988. Kagan is the husband of Victoria Nuland, the former senior State Department official who was directly involved in the 2014 U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine. A self-described neoconservative, Kagan went from a foreign policy advisor in GOP presidential candidate John McCain's campaign in 2008 to joining the Democrats in 2016 and endorsing Hillary. Frankly, I don't think that there's really any transition or space between those two positions. But anyway, on Friday, Kagan said that he quit the Post because the paper declined to endorse Harris in her race against Donald Trump. The Post came under a lot of criticism. 250,000 people have canceled their subscriptions as a result of this. I mean, I don't think there's ever been to put that into perspective, most newspapers would be happy to have 250,000 subscribers to begin with. The Post came under a torrent of criticism for Bezos's decision. Susan Rice, a former senior advisor to Obama, denounced the move as the most hypocritical chicken shit move from a publication that is supposed to hold people in power to account.
I can't believe Susan Rice said chicken shit.
It's awesome. This is cowardice, a moment of darkness that will leave democracy as a casualty. Marty Barron, the Post's executive editor under the Trump years, told NPR, calling the non-endorsement of Harris a disturbing chapter of spinelessness at an institution famed for courage. One aside, his wife, Victoria Nuland, was recently and strangely appointed to the board of the National Endowment for Democracy. So, so let me get this right. So Kagan, who is an architect of the Iraq War, a key architect along with Dick Cheney, who was part of the Project for a New American Century, who's by the way, it's frustrating to me because he's a really good writer and an excellent historian, but his politics are absolutely disgusting. But I would recommend, nevertheless, picking up a used copy so he does not get any royalties, or get it from the library of the History of War. It's really good. But I mean, here's a guy's like, okay, so you don't worry about the fact that you helped kill 1 million Iraqis based on lies, but you're upset that the Washington Post isn't going to give Harris an endorsement that would not change a single vote among any reader. Nobody ever reads a newspaper endorsement and goes, "Oh, okay, I'll vote for that person." That's just maybe locally, for
personally,
mayor.
I don't think newspapers should endorse a candidate. If you at least want to maintain the veneer of impartiality, even though we know that, media outlets go one way or the other, or, the very few that go somewhere in between, but they always lean left or right. But, I being a child of the 80s, I still want to pretend like they at least have the veneer of being impartial. So I think it's a good thing when papers don't endorse a candidate, because I feel like then you're being biased.
Well, that was Bezos' argument in his op-ed, which was published yesterday while you were in hospital. And that is definitely, look, that's a strong argument to make. It's a vestige. And a lot of newspapers, in fairness to both the LA Times, my former employer, and the Post, have been moving in that direction for years. I mean, hell, the New York Times editorialized about the Washington Post about this. They themselves have stopped endorsing in local races. So, I mean, it's not all over the country, basically, editorial pages have been saying, well, we don't really need to endorse it. I mean, nobody cares about our endorsements, and it just turns people off anyway. So fuck it.
That is true.
So
that's
all right,
the most true.
let's move on.
All right, last story. Let's move to the last story.
All right, archaeologists have discovered a Maya city beneath the now this doesn't mean like they still live there or anything like that. Beneath the jungle canopy in Campeche, Mexico. That, according to a new study released yesterday, the ancient site, which is now called Valeriana by the team, contains more than 6,600 structures, including pyramids and ball courts. In other words, it has more infrastructure than most American cities. It is believed to be one of the largest sites in Latin America. The city, which may have housed up to 50,000 people during the classic Maya period, which is the years Common Era 250 to 900, features two major centers about 1.2 miles apart, linked by causeways. Researchers suggest that Valeriana was probably an important political or economic center in the region due to its layout and construction. I mean, I don't know what that means. Okay. Archaeologists discovered the city by analyzing pre-existing LIDAR radar, which is so cool. LIDAR data is a technique in which variations in surface height are measured using airborne laser mapping. I was recently down in Mexico with my son, and we did some archaeological sites that had been discovered using this exact technique. Very cool.
Very cool.
It was found when a researcher stumbled upon the data originally gathered for ecological and forestry studies online, and then said, those look like those aren't just hills. Those look like
something. That's the guy right there. The researcher right there. That's him.
That's so cool. So I mean, he had the right eye, and I mean, just think about the future, right? I mean, there's like landfills are kind of like that. Like on Staten Island, there's this giant Fresh Kills landfill that is big hills, and it's kind of like Staten Island's not really known for its big hills, so it's kind of like imagine it, but they're all covered with grass and stuff, and in the future they'll be overgrown stuff, and I could imagine at some point archaeologists of the future will look at that and say, well, something's under there. That's not natural. That's kind of the same process that happened here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at that. I'm still in awe that real life Indiana Joneses exist out there, and this guy is kind of like a modern day Indiana Jones. He just discovered a freaking Mayan city that's like covered under
there's a lot
foliage
of there is a lot, because that jungle is crazy. It's so fecund, right? It just grows and grows.
So I do wish that we would spend a little more money towards like universities that do this stuff to kind of uncover more of the surface of our planet that we live in. And I'm not saying space travel isn't important or going underwater, but let's explore more about this planet before we spend so much gazillions of dollars in outer space.
Or how about spend less money? I'm okay. I like space exploration quite a lot.
No, I do too. But
I just wish we'd spend less money, bombing our own planet.
Well, that obviously, Ted. But if you bomb everything away, there's not going to be much to discover. So that's there's an easy solution.
That is true. All right.
So that's going to do it, right, for our headline. So I see our guest hanging out in the virtual green room. We're going to bring our guest in here in just a moment. Let me get rid of that cool modern day Indiana Jones.
Goodbye,
I think that's a really cool story. I hope I get to go there in Mexico and see that like in person.
Oh, you will. They'll open that.
Well, they'll have to like clear up all the foliage. So I'm not hiking through jungle.
Yeah, they're going to do that. But I think also, first they're going to let the archaeologists have at it and see what they can dig up and find. And then after that, they'll bring in the tourist office.
Yes. So this is a hint about what we're doing next. So let's take a second here, do a quick Jaws, and we'll introduce our guest. All right. So what's on the screen here? It says DC by foot, Ghosts of Georgetown tour. That's just like one of many different types of historical tours. Our next guest and the company that he works for, DC by Foot, that they give actual walking tours in and around town. I'm gonna pop him on the screen here. There he is. Trevor, I don't want to screw up your name, Trevor, tell us your last name.
It's Comeau.
Comeau.
Yeah.
Is it French?
Is,
That's a French name. Yeah. Comeau.
Yes.
Ah. I got two Frenchmen here.
Oh, great.
Ted is French as well.
True.
So there we go. Ted Comeau is with DC by Foot.
Trevor.
And
Trevor.
See, what did I say?
You said Ted Comeau.
Ted. He's Ted.
Yeah.
That's Trevor over there.
Yeah.
So Trevor, you have how many years have you been a tour guide with DC by Foot?
About 2 years.
Are you a history junkie, history nerd?
I was when I was younger, but I come from the theater world, so just kind of fell into this. Been working with Camden, who is our big like DC like leader guide. Been working with her husband for years, and we just kind of ended up falling into each other. It was awesome.
So tell us a little bit, because this is obviously Halloween is tomorrow. We're not having a live show tomorrow, so that's why we invited DC by Foot to join us on the program. And I live here. Ted's in New York City. I live in Northern Virginia. But I'm a California native, and I love Halloween. I'm not gonna lie. And I love all the ghost stories, and I have yet to do one of these like walking ghost tours. But from what I hear and what I've read, DC is spooky and haunted, and you're nodding. So tell like you go to these sites, like what have you seen? What's creepy where?
All of DC is
creepy. You know, even though DC itself is relatively young in terms of like world cities, it's still old for like our own personal culture. So you just go all throughout the older parts of DC, just like the White House area. That's a lot of ghost activity over there. But Georgetown in particular, because Georgetown's nearly 50 years older than Washington, D.C. is itself. And there are some still really old sections of Georgetown that still exist. Like where we start, the old stone house is the oldest residential home in Georgetown. It was built in the 1760s. So it has a lot of history. There's like, I think 11 or 14 different ghosts that we as guides can choose from to talk about. So you just walk all throughout Georgetown. You're experiencing amazing houses owned by people like the Kennedys. Robert Todd Lincoln owned a house in Georgetown. Lots of amazing just history, but also hauntings. Not so much the hauntings you get in like New Orleans or Salem. This is more like historical ghosts who are just hanging out, having a good time with the living, trying to see what's going on.
Really?
Yeah.
But have people like reported seeing that to you, or have you seen any weird activity doing what you do?
On my very first public tour, my very first one, we always have guests take a photo of a window in one of the houses that we know is not occupied. And sometimes you see things, sometimes you don't. On my very first one, there was a very clear image of a little boy's face in one of the windows. And there's no one lives in that house. So it was very, very odd to see just very clear image of a child's face. And every now and again, we get some stuff like that, but that was definitely the scariest thing for me. It was wild.
So you believe in ghosts?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Did you before
Absolutely.
you took this job?
100%.
Yeah. So I went to school in Georgia at a very old, very Confederate town. So there's a lot of ghostly activity there. I lived in a haunted house, and there was no reason not to believe in ghosts after that experience. Not at all.
Well, go ahead, Ted.
Well, what do you think a ghost is?
It's a great question.
It kind of depends. My own personal belief is that a lot of ghosts tend to be people who died before their time or in some kind of accident. Usually that means that they're just trapped here. That's what I think ghosts are. Now, there are the occasional ghosts that are people who loved doing a particular job while they were alive and want to keep doing it after death in their own unique way.
Workaholics.
Well, yes, workaholics, absolutely.
Manila, I'm looking at you.
You might be
Doing this in the afterlife.
I might be.
Cool.
That's pretty good description. I'm going to haunt like TV studios and newsrooms like all over Washington, D.C.
Could be.
Like, could be. I'll be showing up on screen. Fake news. Like,
They just see an orb go across the screen.
That's
It says
right.
fake news. Oh my gosh, that'd be
That's
fantastic.
right. Just trailing through. Look, I will tell you, like, being from California, we have our own like ghost stories and stuff, and because obviously California is an old Western. I'm from Southern California, and like, you know, like old Western town, right? So we have our own ghost stories, and I've had my own spooky, you know, like I will say Ted's a disbeliever, I believe. I haven't asked Ted, but I'm a believer. I have experienced weird things in my life that are just completely inexplicable by science or whatever. And so when I moved to DC, given its incredible history, right, and documented history of people dying, like I hear the son of Abe Lincoln haunts, like, is it the White House, the Lincoln bedroom or something, like.
Yeah.
See, I've heard all of this, and I've not yet taken one of these tours, but I tend to say that I guess because I'm open to it, Ted, unlike you, I'm open-minded.
Hey, I haven't said a word here.
But because I'm open to it, I'm more apt to receive seeing, you know, like my brain doesn't try to justify what I'm seeing. I just know that I saw something, and I accept that it may not necessarily be, you know, of this world. And I believe that's why the ghosts can, you know, make themselves more known or pronounced to other people, especially in DC, Ted. Like, you got to spend an evening walking through Georgetown. It is freaking scary. It is actually scary. And I don't mean because you might get mugged. I mean,
Which might happen.
which could happen.
So yeah, no, I mean, I've experienced some things that I couldn't explain as well in my life, and so I'm not I'm definitely a person who believes in science, but I also, you know, understand that science doesn't explain everything or can't explain everything. And so, but I mean, that said, so I'm wondering, like, so for example, I live here in Manhattan, and you know, I kind of think about like, is there I just wonder, like, in ghost lore, I feel like just sort of intuitively that places that have a lot of people sort of churning through, that kind of like erases the psychic smear, like of, say, a guy jumping in front of a subway train, and then like, but you know, that trains keep going, passing over that spot. There's thousands and thousands of commuters that go through that station every day, and you don't really feel it. You can be in that same spot like a year later, and it's like nothing ever happened. Whereas, like, if you know, you're in the country and you see a boarded up, abandoned house where someone was murdered, you feel, and I don't know if that's just the power of suggestion, but it feels like if there's fewer people interacting with that spot, like it doesn't get wiped away. You know, I mean, does that make any sense?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That the idea of perception is so important, especially in a place, I think, like New York. New York's huge. There's so much going on, but New York also feels very modern. And I think that also has something to do with it. Our brains are kind of hardwired into today when we're in New York. Whereas I think when you're in somewhere like DC or like New Orleans, we still kind of have a lot of that sort of colonial, but also 1800s history is still kind of right in our backyard.
You have more you keep your older art, even though New York is an older city. You have more, you have we tear down our architecture a lot. In DC, it sticks around longer.
Absolutely. And I
think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's absolutely a fantastic point.
Yeah, like I'm looking here at the company website, and for example, you guys do just regular walking tours, of course, non-spooky, but I'm sure because it's Halloween season that people are asking about this if they're coming to DC around this time, right? And I see you guys offer like Arlington Cemetery tours. What's that about? Because I've heard a lot of, you know, unhappy spirits of soldiers, obviously, given the history. The Kennedys are buried there. Like, tell us about that.
Sure.
So with the Arlington tour, we really stick to the history of that one. There's a lot of reverence with Arlington National
Sure.
Cemetery. So we don't necessarily go into so much of the spirituality, but you kind of feel it when you're there because you're walking amongst American history, but also human history. Every single gravestone is a story. Every single person's lived a life, and there are over 200,000 headstones, but 400,000 people buried at Arlington National
Wow.
Cemetery. So you really feel the presence that you're amongst people who all lived really important lives, even if they were in the infantry and died in Vietnam.
Right.
They are still a person.
Sure.
And the Kennedys, you really get into the depth of why Jackie picked the cemetery to bury John there. President Kennedy was buried there because Jackie said a really beautiful moment they shared on, I believe it's one of the Veterans Days or Memorial Day weekends. They were at the top of the hill at Arlington House, and they were looking out, and President Kennedy said, just under his breath, I could stay here forever. He is now buried at the base of that hill. It's beautiful.
Wow.
So you really
and of
get
course,
that.
he was a hero of World War II.
As well,
Yes, absolutely. A great hero of World War II. And his brother, Joseph, who died in a plane crash during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
His headstone, of course, is in Arlington, but he, of course, is lost to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Tour to lead. I love that tour. I love our Ghost of Georgetown tour, but the Arlington tour is my favorite.
If a body's never recovered of an American serviceman, like let's say lost in Southeast Asia or whatever, can they get a marker at Arlington?
Yeah, so
It says in memory of. For anyone who's buried at sea for the Navy, like, of course, we don't have their remains, but they have a headstone.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing if you have someone who is confirmed to have died in Vietnam, Korea, World War II, they have an in memory of headstone. It's one of my favorite sections in Arlington. It's section G for the most part, but they're all throughout the cemetery as well.
My favorite military grave, I used to live in the Hamptons in Eastern Long Island. I was biking in a cemetery, normal cemetery, and I stopped to get some water. And I just happened to stop. I still have the photo on my phone in front of a military marker. And it was Joseph Heller who wrote Catch-22. And it's a U.S. Army Air Force. And it was awesome because it had an epitaph. There's only one catch.
Oh, that's pretty good. Look, I will vouch for when you step, if anyone comes to DC, I mean, you have to go to Arlington, the Arlington grounds, the cemetery grounds. You really do feel there's like some kind of gravitas when you walk into those like hollowed grounds. The air feels different. And like
any big military cemetery like that, like the one at Normandy.
Oh my God. You're suddenly surrounded by just this, the loudest quiet I can ever, I can't even explain. It's like the loudest quiet when you walk there, and you're surrounded by major highways and stuff. But when you walk there, it's suddenly just eerily quiet, and you just know, there's something very heavy here. And I'm not saying I've seen any ghosts there, but I'm saying you definitely feel that you're on hallowed ground, and that it's a palpable difference from when you walk down the street away. But then you go in the evenings, you go to Georgetown. Like I said, I felt really creepy. I was looking for, when I first moved here like 10 years ago, I was looking for like the Exorcist house and the Exorcist stairs. And apparently DC by foot does those tours. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah, that's in Georgetown, right?
That's right in Georgetown.
It's where we end the tour. You have to come on the tour. We'd love to have you.
All right.
I have to go on the tour. Ted, next time you're here, you have to come.
All right, I'll do it
together.
Let's do it. And then I got to ask you, do you guys do like sort of any of the notorious, brutal murder scene, places in DC? Like Chandra Levy was killed in Rock Creek Park, right? I mean, that's very dark, but like.
We do a Lincoln assassination tour where we take you basically minute by minute, hour by hour of Lincoln's assassination, all throughout that area that includes Ford's Theater. It's such a really cool experience to do. It's not a tour that I lead, but it is one of our best tours that any one of those guides you get it on. That is a 5-star tour every single time. That is just fantastic. I've been on it. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life to do that tour, because you really get steeped in that whole evening, because you can watch films that talk about it, documentaries that talk about it, but when you're standing in the very same place that John Wilkes Booth hopped off of a horse, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
That's just fascinating about it. So live that moment by moment is really awesome.
So aside from that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Yeah. Old joke. Really.
DC is legit like living history. Like that's something I didn't have either growing up in Los Angeles, right? Like we get rid of all of, very few old historic buildings. There's, we have like the Brady Bunch house, right? That's now like walled up. No one can see it because it's like this beautiful mid-century house that you have to be a multimillionaire to own, and multimillionaires over and over have purchased it. But now the last millionaire put up a big wall, so you can't even see the Brady Bunch house anymore. There's like the Manson murder homes, like in Los Feliz. That house, they had to get a change of address on, I think the street is called Windermere. I've been there to that house, and apparently every Halloween, a bunch of, like Manson crazed, I don't know if they're fans or whatever, but they show up there, and allegedly that house is haunted in Los Feliz, which is a multi-million-dollar, area, very fancy area, but people go up there
I would not buy that house.
People do.
I would not. I know. I mean,
like
I know there's kind of like a discount.
I've heard weird things.
There's a discount, a real estate discount for homes where notorious crimes and deaths have occurred. But I'm like,
yes and no. But then there's people that'll pay more for it.
Right.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are people that'll pay more for it. But here in DC, because there are so many historical buildings and like stuff like that, like I've been to Ford's Theater and all of that, not on the tour, but just kind of sticking my head into just to say I've been there. You just know when you go to these old buildings, Ted, you feel something, and there's still life, if I want to call it that. I'm not trying to, but right, Trevor, like there's a feeling when you know that these are historical places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
on the White House at night, you really feel like there's a presence of people who have been, I mean, anywhere that people have been walking around for nearly over 2 centuries, really at this point, who've just been walking around that time and time again, you just feel like you're somewhere that just has a presence to it. And whether that's a spiritual presence or just like this reverence that we give it, you feel it. And that's all that matters, is that you feel it.
Yeah, there's a symbolic resonance, right? I mean, I think whether something like for example, I've never been there, but apparently Hitler's bunker is just buried under a parking lot, right, in Berlin. And apparently people say there's no vibe at all. Like you walk right on top of it. Tour guides will say, right below us is Hitler's bunker, right, where he died.
Really?
But basically, yeah, the Soviets, like, they bombed the entrance to seal it, to make sure it wouldn't be, a marker for, neo-Nazis. But the point is, like, but at the same time, it's true. Like the White House, I mean, obviously people have died in the White House, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think Garfield died in the White House, if I'm not mistaken, after he was shot. He was.
Do you have White House stories, Trevor?
Oh, I mean,
the most frequently seen ghost is Abraham Lincoln. Most famously seen. Winston Churchill saw him while Winston Churchill was bathing. He said he saw the president just in the corner of the room, like kind of staring at him. And Winston Churchill said, "Well, Mr. President, you have me at a disadvantage." While he was just smoking a cigar and having his whiskey. He was a cheeky fellow in the first place, but to have that story is great. People will say if you hear a violin playing periodically where there is no other music, that's usually Thomas Jefferson. If you hear the very antebellum sounding cursing, that's going to be the notorious Andrew Jackson, famous potty mouth.
Question though, Thomas Jefferson, his presidency ended before the White House, the original White House, was burned by the British, right? So does that matter?
No, not
at all. Because the original exterior still survives, all of those ghosts are still present. And of course, during after FDR, I can never remember, is it Wilson or Truman? Whoever followed FDR, they didn't live in the White House for very long because all of the money for the White House was funneled to the war effort. So they had to rebuild the entire interior. So that also didn't move the ghosts around.
That's what's called the Truman balcony.
Yes, they're all hanging out. They're all staying by. It doesn't matter.
It's not named after him. It's really named because he did a gut reno of the White House.
Yeah, he had to. It was going to fall over if they didn't. The whole building was going to collapse if they didn't do an entire renovation.
That's largely forgotten. That people think that the building dates to the War of 1812, but it doesn't.
Right. Not at all. It goes all the way back. Adams moved in before it was even completed in 1800. The roof would leak. He hated. I think he was actually quite happy when he lost his re-election because it meant he didn't have to live in the White House.
Yeah, he hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was a cantankerous fucker anyway.
I've been to the White House and into the I guess it's the West Wing. I wasn't able to step into the Oval Office because it was like roped off, and but I had a after hours tour, and I was hoping, and it was nighttime because it's nighttime, right? So I was hoping I might feel some weird vibes, but I just didn't when I was there. It was 2017. I was hoping I might feel something creepy because I've heard of all of these stories, and I've not heard the Winston Churchill one, which is kind of like you said, it's pretty cheeky. That I mean, why would Winston Churchill make that up, right? If he why would he say that? So I was, I've heard of other stories of just like random like chambermaids or whatever walking around and moving curtains and things like that, and I've heard that, and I've oftentimes stood out front on the north lawn just staring at the windows waiting to see if like a curtain will move, but none of that happened when I was there. I was like kind of really, really hoping to see that because I am a believer, Ted, and I like believing. And because look, having been a reporter for like the better part of 20 years, like I stick to facts, what I can see, what's provable and whatever. But then there's this whole other world where you cannot rely on, is there scientific fact? Can I swab the ghost and I put it under a microscope? No, there's this whole other world that cannot be explained, and you just have to follow your gut. And I've been in enough situations where, and even as a reporter, you follow your gut and it's proven true. I think ghosts are real. And I'm not saying this just because it's Halloween. I believe the spirit world is there. I believe DC is like mega haunted. I believe all, like we're right at the Mason-Dixon line. I believe there are, like open fields where battles were fought and whatever, that weird things will probably happen if you just wait and just are open to seeing them, that they might happen, Ted.
Okay. Ted, we have skeptics on all of our tours. I actually ask before I get started if anyone believes in ghosts. And the people who don't raise their hands, I'm like, great, that's okay. Maybe by the end you'll believe. If not, I hope you at least have fun. That's all that matters for me.
Well, of course.
Yeah, I think it's important to also just point out, I guess, when the people come on the tour with you guys, that you guys also, just point, there are historical things that happen, like so-and-so died here. And, whether or not you believe in ghosts, it's just the fact that so-and-so died here, like Mary Todd and Abe lost their kid here. And, like that stuff happens, and let the person interpret, whether or not they feel the vibe of, little Abe Jr. I don't know his name. I'm sorry, but
definitely not Abe Jr.
Not Abe Jr. But I have heard that existed, that his there's a spirit of like a small child in the White House, and I heard that was one of them. It was Abe Lincoln's lost son, is what I heard.
Time, I can quickly talk about that and do it really, really quickly.
Please do.
Mary Todd Lincoln was a big spiritualist. This is an era of huge renaissance in spiritualism in the country, and she had a huge amount of reverence for it. So she would hold seances in the White House, wanting to talk to their son, who they lost in the White House. He drank contaminated water and died tragically in the White House. And seances don't just let in the ghosts you want to talk to. You talk to any ghost around. So her son did come back. They had many a conversation. He's probably now stuck in the White House. But there's also probably ghosts from all throughout human history who are just now like, oh, cool, this is a cool building. Let me haunt it. It's America's most famous haunted house, without a doubt. All because of Mary Todd Lincoln missing her son. That's all she wanted. She just wanted more time with her kid.
Oh.
That breaks your heart, but it's also like, girl, you let in a lot of ghosts.
So she opened the door to the neither world, I guess.
Exactly. A little portal in for all those ghosts who were hanging out by the White House. Like, well, this is cool. Let me pop on in.
I believe that. I could tell you off camera, Ted, other stories, but there's an app for that. I'm just gonna say, because there's I have it. There's a ghost app.
Is there really?
There
Like,
is.
To show what does it show? Like purported sightings or?
No, it does, like, I don't even, because I'm not like super into this, but I do believe. But like, I guess it does like a EMF maybe. You hear a lot of like staticky sounds, and then if there is a spirit present, which I've done this like walking through DC, then you will hear some weird interference come through that staticky sound, and it kind of tries to translate what it thinks it heard. And there's, look, one story I'll tell you, a personal story. When I bought my condo in Falls Church, it's really close to like an early 19th century, a very small private cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, stone's throw from it. And when, being the believer that I am, I turn on the app, and in my new condo, I walk around and I'm asking, is anybody else here? And I had two other people in the room with me going, oh no, there goes Manila with her, her ghost app. And I asked it, and believe it or not, I know you're probably not going to believe me, but things came through the little EMF thing, and I tuned into one of them, and I started talking to it, and it said, it actually, I said, well, where are you in the room? And it said red chair. And I have a mid-century molded red chair. And I looked and I went, oh, what? No. And I told the two people that were helping me move, and I said,
maybe the app just has an AI thing that recognizes furniture.
No, this is like pre-AI, and the camera's not on. I just set it on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
I just said it. There's no explanation. How does it know I have this red molded? It didn't say molded chair, but the fact that it said red chair. And then there was another, it gave me a name at one point, a woman's name. And I told my two friends, I said, what are the chances that if you guys are, up for it, let's go to the cemetery down the street. Cause it's, from what I understand, it's like 18th, 19th century cemetery. No one new is buried there. Let's just say that it's old. So I said, what are the chances that we can go find it? And it's not very big, right? So I said, what are the chances we find this name? Because the name that came up was an old timey sounding name that would have fit that era. And no joke, guys, we went there. I found the first and middle name. We couldn't make out the last name, but we found a headstone with that name.
Whoa.
So
I see why you believe.
I'm just saying. And I thought the app was like a fun, stupid little thing just to goof around with. But that's when I believed it. As soon as it said red chair, and then another time it gave me a name, and I went to go look. So I know, like, even though I've lived here for 10 years, I have to go do one of these tours with DC by foot, Trevor, and you have to hook me up on the scariest tour possible.
Come with me.
Any of our guides are great, but you're on my tour, we'll have a great time.
Cool.
I got to go see, like, I didn't know that about Mary Todd, which is kind of creepy, I got to say.
Well, kids used to die really easily, and it was the people, historical figures, a lot of them were just absolutely, like Thomas Jefferson lost a beloved daughter and was just absolutely wrecked by that experience.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow. A lot of kids dying.
Yeah. When you go to like 19th century and 18th century graveyards, man, there's a lot of kids. There's just
You go
They
to
drop
Arlington
the
National
guys.
Cemetery, even pre-1950s, you'll see a lot of burials. Dependent children can be buried there. You'll see, it breaks my heart every time you'll see an infant dies the day they're born, or children under 10,
Oh.
a lot before the 1950s. So many. It breaks my heart every time.
Wow. Well, I mean, the polio vaccine, if we think about like how much science has
Oh, God.
intervened in saving lives. Yeah. So I guess that would make
Oh,
sense.
I would have died for sure. I mean, I had all sorts of pulmonary issues as a kid. Still do. You know,
Man.
if it wasn't for antibiotics, I'd be, you know.
Well, probably a lot of us. Yeah. That's yeah. So we'll leave that right there. Trevor, I'm so glad that you were able to join us and give us at least a little like peek into some of DC's haunted history for our fun little Halloween special. We don't ordinarily do stuff like this, but we have to because it's Halloween. I know it's showing Christmas right now, but still, it's Halloween.
That's a Christmas tree. That's the Willard,
It's
amazing Willard lobby during Christmas. Best lobby in the city. Best.
Yes. You know, oh, by the way, I'm glad that you brought that up. I heard the Round Robin bar was the bar that John Wilkes Booth was drinking at before he shot Lincoln.
Yeah,
It's right around the corner. Ford's is right there. The Round Robin was a great place to drink. Grant drank there as well. President Grant would actually leave the White House and go to the Round Robin to get away from the crowds of people who wanted to talk to him. He hated that aspect of being the president. So he would just leave, bring his cigar. So they'll tell you if you're walking through the Willard lobby and you smell cigar smoke, it might be a fancy person who smokes cigars still. Or it's Grant. And that's kind of cool, especially inside the Round Robin. I think it's non-smoking now. So if you're in there and no one around you smells like cigar smoke, maybe you're sitting near the former president of the United States.
You know, right now I'm
cool.
I'm only 3/4 of a mile from where he's buried.
oh wow.
Oh,
yeah, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. You know, it's funny. You know, there was the old joke test was like, who's buried in Grant's tomb, and you're supposed to say Grant. But actually, it's Grant and his wife side by side.
Okay, great.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I never thought about. Well, there it is. There's the Willard in the bar. But yeah, I never thought about that. But yeah, very cool. So I really appreciate. Let me put DC by Foot back on here. I really appreciate you giving us a little sneak peek about what you guys discuss on the tours that you do at DC by Foot. Trevor Comeau, thank you so much.
Thanks, Trevor. So fun.
Yeah, of course. We still have room at 7 o'clock tonight, y'all. Come check us out if you're in DC.
Okay.
You're listening. I'm
All
on
right.
the 7 o'clock tour tonight. Very good.
Go find Trevor Comeau. Ask for Trevor Comeau.
Absolutely.
He'll scare the daylights out of you on purpose.
Hopefully.
Please.
And you'll like it.
Awesome. Ted Manila, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you
Bye,
so
Trevor.
much,
Thanks.
Trevor.
Take care.
Thanks,
Guys, see ya.
Bye. So, Ted, when next time you're in town,
We'll do it.
You got to go do. I've been meaning to do one of these tours. I mean, I've lived here for over 10 years, and I've been meaning to do like a proper tour, so I get to know where I live, you know. And I've meant to do it, but I just haven't. And
these things are fun. I did a tour of the dungeons of London, and it was
cool.
done at night, and it's so cool. Like one of the, I mean, it might sound crazy. You're on the street, and at one point there's just like it just looks like a sewage grate, and then they shine a light through the sewage grate, and you can see down into a dungeon where people were incarcerated, hundreds of years ago. It's absolutely like terrifying.
That is fascinating. All I can think of is there's an episode of Married with Children when they go to London, and they do a little bit of this London tour that you're talking about. This like dungeons.
I think it's a pretty notorious thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really fun. That was like one of my early impressions as a kid, watching Married with Children, and they go to London, and it's just hilarious. But I love London, but I've got to go do that too. But yeah, next time you're here, let's do that.
Okay.
I think we know somebody now. We know somebody.
Let's do it. Yeah, we know a guy who knows a guy. He is the guy.
That's right.
All right.
He is the guy. Yeah. All right. So that is going to do it for us. So our hour is up. I'm well enough, but my lumbar, like my puncture wound in my spine, I need to lay down. That's all.
Yeah, you need to rest.
I need to lay down. But
Go binge
Like
watch
you said.
something, read something boring, and go to sleep.
I don't know how to do that, Ted. Like, this is what I know how to do. This, like, I have stories I want to research, but I suppose I'm going to try to figure out how to use my laptop, like, laying down somehow so I can, because they said I need to lay off.
It's the only
fine.
proper application for an iPad, really, is this kind of
Oh,
thing.
that's true. I guess I can use the iPad for that, but then I can't type. But,
Yeah.
you know,
You
what are
shouldn't
you gonna
really
do?
be typing anyway.
Yep, I have other, stuff I'm working on
Of
for
course
self-employed.
you do. If you don't want to end up as a ghost in your own tour, you need to chill.
Well, that's that. Whatever, it's fine. I'm well enough to at least sit up every now and again to type. So that's what I'm gonna do. But no
right.
trick or treating for me. All right, that's
No.
gonna do it for us. Thank you, Putinbot Gaming, of course, for keeping out the trolls, dropping the hammer in there, supporting the show. Make sure you guys support Putinbot Gaming as well by subscribing and checking out that gaming channel. And of course, please subscribe to us. If you're on YouTube, it's free. If you are on Rumble, it's free. Except we have a troll tax now. I think
true.
that's official. We call it a troll tax, a $5 a month troll tax.
I think we should start charging more than $5 a month for trolls.
It's the level.
Good people
the level.
$5, but trolling should be more. Trolling should be $50 a month.
True. That's true. That is a good one.
This is the TED tax. You want to troll?
I like it.
And right now today there was a tease troll, someone who from a blast from our past who came in to poke a little bit. Then he poked and then he left. So that's micro trolling, I would say.
A micro troll is fine. It's like microaggression. I'm like, fine, whatever. But for everybody else, at least subscribe for free. Show some love here. Hit that follow button, the subscribe, the thumbs up, so you can support little indie channels like ours. We're 2 weeks old tomorrow, so we're not quite 2 weeks yet.
Yeah.
But if you're in the position, please become a $5 a month subscriber on Rumble. You have to do it from the .com, from a desktop, if you are able. That's how you do it in the Rumble chat. It has like a subscribe button next to the $sign. If you're able, we would greatly appreciate it, because that will help us keep doing this show for you. So if you find value in what we do, please help us out by subscribing, and then we can keep doing this. And then we're working on, Ted, right, our locals and our premium content. We're learning all of this, guys.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we're going to be. Yeah, we're
Gen Xers.
We're figuring it out now, and it's I mean, I think we're climbing a pretty steep learning curve. We're learning a lot, but it's like, and basically, the more you guys support us, the more we're going to be able to do, and then we're going to be able to explode, expand it, we'll bigify it.
Bigly. We'll do it bigly, everybody. We'll do it bigly. So we'll be back on Friday. No show tomorrow. I'm going to see how much trouble my kid is in tomorrow at
oh boy,
parent-teacher conference.
Don't be mad. Remember, don't be mad. Don't get mad.
I know. Be nice. She's a kindergarten teacher. Be nice, Manila. She's a kindergarten teacher.
I meant to your kid, but yeah, good point. Be nice to the teacher too.
I'm nice to my kid.
Teachers have a very, very, very hard time.
I know. I'm nice to my kid. I'm stern, but I'm nice to my kid. But I'm also not the most kumbaya, because you know what? Sometimes those little punks, if they get in a fight, sometimes kids deserve it. They get in a fight for a reason.
I used to tell my kid that too. I was like, never start it, but if they
that's what I told my son.
But if they start it, clock them. Make sure they never come back.
Thank you. Well, my son got picked on by two boys.
Trouble, and I said, I'll run interference for you. Don't worry about it. I mean,
that was me.
You have to worry about.
My kindergartner came home with a shirt collar pulled, and I said, "What happened?" He told me 2 boys picked on him. He took the first swing. He took the first swing, and then they kept chasing him. He ran and grabbed. He drinks an adult-sized water bottle, the metal ones. That's what I sent him to school with. He grabbed his water bottle and swung it.
I like it.
So
I'm a fan of, I'm a fan of, and I shouldn't tell anyone this, should they attack me.
There were injuries.
But I like objects. Objects are good. My tool of choice in my fighting days was a chair. Yeah.
My son grabbed an object and swung it.
That was smart.
And there were some injuries.
You don't hit people with your fists, because fingers hurt. You can break your
Well,
you can break your hand.
He
when
did that
you hit someone.
first, but they didn't leave him alone. So then he tried to run away. I don't know where the teachers were. My question is, why didn't you intervene? Anyway, we're going to talk about this with the teacher tomorrow, but he grabbed the water bottle by the little
The handle.
and swung it.
Bong.
And one of the boys was fairly injured, but they haven't bugged him since.
Well, that's the main point here. Yeah. So fuck them. All right.
Yeah. So I'm going to defend my kid tomorrow after my
Good job.
doctor's appointment. So that's what
Take
I
it
taught my
easy.
kid.
Rest.
Don't start it. Don't start it.
Watch something
But if
addictive.
someone
Binge-
starts it, you best finish it, kid.
Binge watch something addictive, like
Yeah.
Lost or something. All right.
News.
News is
All right,
not
guys.
addictive. All right.
That's
I'll
going to
talk
do
to
it.
you later.
We'll see you guys on Friday. Oh, we're going to do medical stuff on Friday.
Okay. Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. We got a real MD, not about my medical stuff. I mean, like medical stuff for real, like politics and medical.
All right. Cool.
Maha.
Yeah. And
All
we're
right.
only going to be at that point just 4 days away from the election. So, wow, it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. So that'll do
Uh,
it. Thank you, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Have a great Halloween. Happy
Bye.
Halloween, all. Adios, amigos.
Bye.